Let's get started in enabling Braintree in WooCommerce. The first step is that you must install WooCommerce's Braintree plugin. There are a few different ways a plugin can be installed in your WordPress site, whether it be by going on Plugins, Add New Plugin, and searching the phrase Braintree, or downloading the plugin from the official WooCommerce website here. I'll be providing the link to this page as well as any related resources mentioned in this video guide in the description section. It's important to have an experienced WordPress developer ensure that the WordPress site gets backed up before doing this change, as well as be able to restore a backup of the site if needed. Once the plugin is both installed and activated successfully, we can hover over the WooCommerce option in the left menu and click on Settings. As you can see, the plugin may already give you notices up top giving you a shortcut to go directly to the setup page. I'm going to show you how to arrive at the page manually in case you don't see this notification. So let's click on the Payments tab at the top. Scroll to the bottom and find the Braintree credit card option, and we can click on that title, or to the far right, we can click on Finish Setup. We want to enable the first option by clicking on the checkbox here. For the title, we can make it a bit more descriptive by adding credit/debit card. The next few options here already have our best practice settings, but you're more than welcome to modify them. I did want to take note on the card logos. We normally will remove the Diners, Maestro, and JCB so that only the 4 major logos are displayed on checkout. That's just your preference. Let's scroll down, and for the debug mode, let's change it to Save to Log so that we can collect logs to help with any future troubleshooting. Make sure your environment is production if this is your production website. For this video guide, I'm going to do Sandbox, and you can change it as well if you're testing on a staging website, for example. For the Share Connection settings from other gateway, we do not want to check this. We want to leave it disabled as we don't want to use settings from another section at this moment. Instead, let's add some credentials for the first time right now. You'll find your Braintree API credentials by logging into your Braintree account and clicking on the gear icon at the top right, and then clicking on API. Then, under the column called Private Key, you'll click on a link that says View to view all of your main credentials. I have mine already, so I'll paste my Sandbox Merchant ID here, my public key, and my private key. For the merchant account IDs section, if you have multiple merchant accounts in your Braintree gateway, you can add them here. You can find the full list by logging into your Braintree account and clicking on the gear icon at the top right and clicking on Business. So you'd first tell us which currency that merchant account has assigned, and then click here to add the name of the merchant account that you'd like to add. If you aren't sure what this is, or if you only have one merchant account in your gateway, then you don't have to modify this section. I'm just going to delete this here, and it will use the only merchant account ID that you have in your Braintree gateway. Or if you have multiple ones, but leave this section untouched, then that will tell Braintree that you want the default merchant account to be used. We can scroll down for the dynamic descriptors section. It allows you to customize the information that customers may see on their card statement, such as business name, phone number, and URL. We suggest that you leave it blank if you want it to just use the information that you provided during your onboarding, but if you want to customize it for this particular website, please make sure to click here and read the documentation, since there are strict rules and character limits for how to write out the information. If written incorrectly, payments will fail on the website for having an invalid character or something of the sort. So please make sure you read the documentation thoroughly or leave all these options blank. For the fraud settings, if you have advanced fraud enabled in your Braintree account, or if you use Count Direct, select the options appropriate here. Otherwise, we always want to leave it on basic, which is the default for all Braintree gateways. Similar with the 3D Secure section, we want to leave it on standard unless you want to only accept payments that explicitly pass the 3D Secure challenge. Leaving it on standard is recommended for now. Let's now click on Save Changes. Our changes are now saved. We can see this smaller Apple Pay option here. Let's go ahead and click on that. We can enable the first checkbox here. Since I'm using my Braintree Sandbox credentials, I have to enable test mode by clicking here. Then I can click on Save Changes. There is one last step for Apple Pay, and that is to add the URL of your store to your Braintree gateway. Let me show you how that looks. Log in to your Braintree gateway for the next steps. Here I am in the Braintree dashboard. We can click on the gear icon at the top right and click on Account Settings. Then enable the Apple Pay toggle, and you'll have to agree to terms and conditions if this is your first time enabling it. Then let's click on Options. Under the Websites section, you'll see I already have a website listed here, so my Add link is to the far right, but yours may be located in the middle. So let's go ahead and click on Add. For Sandbox, all you have to do is add your URL and click on Agree and Add Domain. That's it for Apple Pay in Sandbox. But let's go ahead and change for production. You will see here that it will ask you to type out your URL and then in step 2 to download a file and add it to your website in a specific website directory called .well-known. Let me show you just one example of a typical way to do this on a common control panel interface. Here is a directory view. My website lives in this public_HTML folder here, so that's considered my root. Here, I have this .well-known folder, or I would have had to create one with an option such as this here and name it exactly as shown here. If I navigate inside of this folder, you will see that the Apple file already exists for me. This is where you would upload or drag and drop the file in your server at this location. If I show you my file permissions, you can see that this is able to be read by the public, which is what we need. On an Apple machine, downloading this file at times appends a DMG file extension, which you will simply have to rename the file, erasing the .dmg portion of the name, leaving it without a file extension. Going back to the Braintree page to add my domain, I can use this URL preview to check if the file is viewable publicly. Sure enough, here it is. I'll close this now and go back, and now I'll click on Agree and Add Domain, and that's it. I've just showed you one way out of many ways that this can be done. This is specifically for production mode. For sandbox mode, adding the URL will always work, irrespective if the file is located in the right location or not. So please keep that in mind and make sure that for production, it gets added correctly. Let's return back to the WooCommerce page and click on Payments for the last step. Scroll down and this time click on the Braintree (PayPal) option, or on the far right, click on Finish Setup. Make sure in your Braintree account that PayPal is also enabled and linked successfully, and we can click on this Enable this gateway for this first option. You will see the next few options are for appearance and are already preset to our best practice settings, but you're welcome to modify any of the options to best fit your website. If we continue scrolling down, these are also preset to our best practice settings, and I will take note for the debug mode to also leave it on Save to Log for PayPal as well. Make sure that the environment matches what you set in the first settings page. I'll change mine to Sandbox, and here is where that Share Connection settings should already be pre-enabled, and you can enable it if it isn't. This will share the same API credentials that you placed on the credit card settings, so that you don't have to repaste them here. Similar to the previous settings, the merchant account IDs are also listed here, and it's possible that you may have different ones for PayPal. If that's the case, then it's the same process. Select the currency first, then click here to add the merchant account ID shown in your Braintree account. If you don't have multiple merchant accounts or simply want the default one to be used, then you can leave this section as is. Now to finalize and enable PayPal with Braintree, we can click on Save Changes. And that's it. We have now successfully enabled Braintree in WooCommerce.